Good evening. Welcome to tonight's broadcast here at the IKIF Festival. We're here live from Hunter College at Kaye Playhouse. I am Huangci.
I am Magdalena Baczewska.
And I'm Edward Zilberkant.
Edward is definitely no stranger to this camera here, and I'd like to renew our thanks to our technical team behind the camera, Asaf Blasberg, and running around the Kaye Playhouse at Hunter College is Joe Patrych. Thank you guys so much. Claire, it's so nice to have you here and see you making your hosting debut tonight.
Yeah, actually I've been on like a couple of days, but we're very happy. I'm so glad to be sharing it with you. I watched a lot of the broadcast earlier last week.
I'm so glad. Well, I'm sorry I had missed you guys for about a week now. I just returned from China, where I was playing a recital of the works of Chopin and Szymanowski, and in northern China, Inner Mongolia, a city called Hohat. And boy, it was hot there.
Even compared to here. Wow.
Certainly. Well, it was it was much drier heat, so a little bit more bearable. But tell me, what have I missed? Looks like it's been quite a week for everyone.
Yeah, well, I think we've had a number of great concerts. I mean, I've had the pleasure to share the stage with Eduard now 2 times. We had a faculty concert yesterday as well as a concerto evening the evening before, and it's been only inspiring.
Yeah, and again, this whole past week has been tremendous. Of course, we had Jerome Rose, who played an opening concert, and then we had Alessio Bach, and of course you played a magnificent performance of the Goldberg Variations that is still the highlight of this festival, both on harpsichord and the piano, right before you were whisked away to China on your tour. And it's been a very busy time, and a lot of teaching, a lot of playing, a lot of master classes, a lot of great performances. This evening we're here for a performance of Nina Tichman, a great American pianist who now resides in Cologne, Germany. She's a professor there in Cologne, and she's been here on a number of years in different guises, and it's a very interesting program of Schubert, the famous G major sonata, and she's doing the complete book 1. Some of people might think it's book 2 of Debussy, but it's book 1 of Debussy Preludes, which really is a fascinating piece.
Yes, and Nina's bio here reads that her recording of the complete Debussy works have been named a milestone in Debussy interpretation, so we sure look forward to that performance. But I'd like to ask Claire about the G major Schubert Sonata. You have played it. Tell us about the experience of playing this monumental piece.
I have to say it's a very personal one. I remember, I think I was 14 years old. I was at the Curtis Institute of Music, and at that time, for me, Schubert, it was kind of long and rather repetitive music. And I remember somebody in our seminar, in our weekly seminar, someone came and played this G major, and people were saying, oh yeah, they're playing the big G major sonata. It's almost 40 minutes long. And somehow I was struck by this piece. It was so haunting. I remember the student only played maybe the first movement, and I was so struck that that night I went home and I looked through the music and I told my teacher that I wanted to learn it right away. And it was probably my very first Schubert sonata, as a matter of fact. So it has real special meaning to me, and I absolutely cannot wait to hear it. I think it's one of those serene pieces, which is more like a kind of mind massage, like meditation in a way. And I'm sure all of us in this kind of New York heat can do with this kind of music.
I like the word mind massage. That sounds really lovely. I would like to hear more about the concert you guys did the other day of the Jägermeister's orchestra, and you're conducting. I don't even know how you found the time to rehearse with the orchestra among hosting the webcast, teaching, and practicing for your performance.
Well, it was again very exciting. It was a tremendously talented group of people that were on stage, and they're phenomenal orchestras. Some of them are all professionals from New York area, also from Marlborough. Some of them are in mostly Mozart orchestras. So really a top-notch caliber ensemble, and it was really a pleasure to work with them. And of course the three solos with Claire and then Massimiliano and Mattei, it was really a lot of fun. And one of the things we'd like to mention is that if you have missed any of the concerts of what we've had in the past week, that we've been going just now over a week, you can go on ikif.org/live and click on the previous shows, and you can hear that particular concert. I would certainly, again, welcome you to hear Magdalena's incredible performance of the Goldberg Variations, which, again, in everybody's mind stands out as some of the highlights of this season's performance. There's great performances, again, of Jerome Rose, Alessio Bach, and we were talking about the Schubert Sonata. It seems to be, in some ways, a Schubert year this year. We've had lots of Schubert Sonata. Jerome Rose, on his first recital, played the big late A major sonata. We had Alan Goldstein play the big C minor sonata. We have the G major today. I think for encores we had some Schubert being played. So some of the big sonatas, and I found with a lot of students that we're teaching that there have been a lot of students bringing in some big Schubert sonatas. So this is sort of nice to see, because a lot of times some composers and compositions sort of take cycles to go through, and this seems to be a Schubert year, which is nice to see, because I think his music is very difficult to play, and I'm glad that students are experimenting with this. How did you find? I know today you had your big master class in Lang, and I've heard some G minor ballade and some other things. So of course it's some of the staples. But how was your experience after getting back, especially after China?
Well, it's certainly a pleasure to be back at the music stand in a teacher role. I had, yes, the G minor ballade in a master class. The two following students brought Bach. So I first heard the last fugue of the Well-Tempered Klavier's first book, the beautiful, long, rich and dense B minor fugue. And after that, the tremendous C minor toccata. I don't think there are any really small pieces of Bach that you could just dismiss them. And that was a lot of fun, because we did touch upon the issue of playing this music on various instruments and what qualities they represent. And I believe that for many students here at IKIF, it might have been the first time to hear the harpsichord being played live, the different sphere of volume, for example, the different approach to articulation and to phrasing. I think that might have triggered some inspiration. At least that is my hope, that this is what it did. But coming back to Schubert, for being 14 and approaching a large sonata like the G major that we will hear tonight by Nina Tichman, must be quite a daunting challenge. Did your teacher even for a bit doubt that you will be able to handle this at such tender age?
Absolutely. I think she tried very hard to dissuade me from playing this piece. And I remember I insisted, and I told her I wasn't planning on using it in concerts. That was a lie. And I said, just to learn, just from my own experience. And it was really rewarding, because at that time in my life, it's difficult to find this inner peace, this serenity that's needed for any of the late Schubert sonatas in particular. And I think it helped me a lot in terms of timing, in terms of learning about control and breathing. And I think some of these pieces, I mean, many people say you shouldn't learn them when you're young, but actually it's better to approach them at a young age and later grow into them, because I've had the chance to play it later on, and it feels like just coming back to an old friend or so. Very comfortable. And
that's true. Very much against the school of thought where the teacher forbids
Yeah.
the student to tackle the big repertoire.
Yes.
Certainly. Speaking of big repertoire, tomorrow night's concert, we have some of the staples, starting with Bach, Busoni, Chopin in D minor, Brahms, Handel Variations, Opus 24, and after the intermission, we will hear the complete Chopin Scherzi, and the pianist will be Arnaldo Cohen. So we encourage you to tune in tomorrow night at ikif.org/live.
And I know at intermission of tonight's concert is going to be a very special event, and that is Jerome Rose is going to be here interviewing both Arnaldo Cohen and Alexander Kobrin. And the interesting fact is that all three of them are gold medal winners of the Busoni competition. And they're all three obviously appearing on the stage here at IKIF and playing concert, and Arnaldo Cohen will be on concert tomorrow night, and then Alexander Kobrin will be sort of the last guest featured artist in many respects on Friday night, and then Saturday is a special gala performance by some of the younger generation pianists. So there will be three pianists sharing a stage with different performances. But it is going to be a very interesting discussion about their experiences. They're certainly many years apart as far as when one won the competition and the other, and their background, and also the interesting fact that all three of them, I believe, at the end of August, are flying to Italy to be on the jury of this year's Busoni competition. So it's going to be a mini reunion, and again, we urge you to stay tuned at intermission time of tonight's concert, where Jerome Rose will be speaking with Alexander Kobrin and Arnaldo Cohen, which will be very, very exciting. So.
That's wonderful. Sounds great. Well, Claire, you're quite a competition veteran already at your young age. Tell us a little bit more about your experience in competition in general, for some of the audience members who might just start approaching the issue of entering competitions, whether to do it or not. Is this something useful or not?
I think competitions are fascinating just in general, simply because everyone in nature is a little bit competitive. I mean, everyone wants to strive to do their best. And I've always found that it's difficult for music, that it's such a subjective thing, to be really given points based on an interpretation which can be viewed in both ways. I mean, I've seen so many times where people have polarizing opinions about the same performance. I'm not going to in any way discourage. I think that for me, it helped a lot. There were also a lot of effects where you just have to be strong. You have to really tough it out. And it builds your character. It builds you as a person, as a musician. And I think for any young aspiring musician, it's one of the ways that you go out there, you show them your skill, and you do your very best and hope that something will come out of it. It's something necessary for every person, I would say.
Thank you for these words. Well, David Dubal is going to take the stage in just a few minutes and tell us a little bit more about the pieces we're going to hear tonight. A quick word also about the Debussy Preludes. Some of you might already be aware of the fact that Debussy was the first composer who included the titles of the pieces at the end, after the double bar, as though not to suggest the meaning of the piece or the interpretation thereof, but rather leave it as an afterthought. I think it's a very poetic idea,
Exactly.
don't you?
Exactly, and I think after David Dubal's lecture, which they're telling us he's about to start, I think we'll probably discuss maybe the idea of what program music is and how it would be interpreted in Debussy's works and some of the others. So I think it will be very exciting. And without further ado, I think David Dubal is about to take stage. We hope you enjoy a pre-concert lecture on tonight's program.
Good evening. My name is Scott Gentile, and I'm the assistant to the festival directors, Jerome Rose and Julie Kadersha. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you here with us tonight, and to welcome all of our audiences from Canada, England, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Russia, Israel, India, China, Japan, Malaysia, and all of our viewers from around the world to the Kaye Playhouse at Hunter College. It's an honor to have David Dubal with us tonight. He's been giving pre-concert lectures every night. He is a man truly mad about the piano. You can listen to his program, Reflections from the Keyboard, on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. and Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on WQXR. On behalf of IKIF, we thank Yamaha Artist Services. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Dubal.
Thank you very much for being here. You're very kind. I see many of the same faces, and more people will come in. But the important thing is that it is seen worldwide, so we need pianists and musicians to be heard everywhere they can in our great moment of civilization. This is a very important program because the 12 Preludes of Debussy are on this program. And the first book, that is. The second book was composed in 1913, and this was composed in 1910. And Debussy had already contracted cancer by 1909, so imagine what he lived through till he died at 1918. I'm going to, because the Wall Street Journal, at the year of his centenary, asked me on the last days of September, they said they had done nothing on Debussy's 150th anniversary, and would I write an article? And I said, of course I will, and I'm going to read it to you because I think that you will have a great sense of this composer. You may think of him in a very different way after I read it, because he's one of the masters of all time. So the article is called, and you can download it if you wanted, The Piano as Paintbrush, The Wondrous Colors of Debussy. I'm going to read fast because I have a lot to get in today. During this 150th anniversary year of the composer's birth, or any year for that matter, there are plenty of performances of Claude Debussy's music. Certainly someone at this moment is attempting to play the celebrated Clair de Lune, and although Debussy 1862-1918 lived less than 2 decades into the 20th century, his influence has been paramount to the musical art of that century, more so even than that of Igor Stravinsky or Arnold Schoenberg. In 1971, Stravinsky, just months before his own death, stated that Debussy is in all senses the century's first musician. Virgil Thomson, critic and composer, wrote, "Internationally viewed, he is to the musicians of our century everywhere what Beethoven was to the 19th, our blinding light, our sun, our central luminary." Why I'm reading this to you is that I don't believe that many Americans understand that Debussy is the leading composer of the 20th century, because we're so prone to think of music here in a Germanic sense. Even at age 20, in Wagner-mad Paris, Debussy knew that the thick-textured German romanticism of Anton Bruckner, Hugo Wolf, and Richard Wagner was a dead end. The composer Erik Satie told Debussy that we had better create a French music and without sauerkraut. Debussy demanded new forms that reflected the revolutionary poetry and painting of the new century. It's an unbelievable time in artistic history. His mature music showed almost no resemblance to the past. Balance and regularity no longer mattered. The diversity, irregularity, and discontinuity of his forms were entirely different in each work. For his new soundscape, for that it is, he made chords into building blocks, shifting and juxtaposing them for contrast rather than resolution, meaning totally opposite of the Viennese classicists or Chopin or the others. Harmonic progression was no longer a necessity as it had been since J.S. Bach. With Debussy, the chord itself became freed of its necessity to move. A single chord could become a sensuous experience in itself. But Debussy was not formless. In fact, he is one of the supreme formal designers in music history. Perfection was his goal, and as the pianist Marguerite Long wrote, he worked at his craft like a refined lover. Unpredictability and logic combine as in no other composer. He's flawless. His originality emerged at about age 30 with his orchestral tone poem Prelude to an Afternoon of a Faun, inspired by Stephen Mallarmé's poem. The work ushered in a new era in musical expression. The composer Pierre Boulez said, "The art of music began to beat with a new pulse," end of quote. With its exotic scales, Faun inhabited a trance-like state of quivering sensations. At the time, Debussy wrote that, and this is important, music is not something that can flow inside a rigorous form. It consists of colors and of rhythmicized time. Even before Faun, Debussy had become entranced with Maeterlinck's play Pelléas et Mélisande, although the 1890s saw him compose his single-string quartet and the evocative 3 nocturnes for orchestra. He was obsessed with his opera based on the Maeterlinck work, which he worked on from 1892 until its premiere in 1902. When completed, it was the most radical opera since Wagner's Tristan and Isolde. Pelléas is the last word in musical refinement, and those attuned to it are always shaken by its unearthly beauty. By the way, in my own case, I had absolutely no interest or appreciation of Debussy until the age of 40. He just didn't hit me. Marcel Proust could not hear it enough. The poet Adrienne Monnier and her sister saw it every chance they could. From the first notes, we would begin to shed tears and to sniff and sob, she said. Debussy once said that if he had not been a musician, he would have been a painter. For he was a painter, of course. His favorite painter was not an impressionist, a term he abhorred, but J.M.W. Turner, whom he thought the greatest of all colorists. And it is as a colorist that Debussy is the most wondrous tone painter of music. There's a little fly here. A wondrous tone painter of music, employing unknown regions of sonority and timbre. In 1905, he completed La Mer, one of the miracles of orchestral music. To perform it well, the composition needs musicians who are painters. Debussy himself said there should only be sirens in the sea. The piano was his most important paintbrush, always close at hand. His body of piano music is the most original since Franz Liszt's. His biographer, Lachspeiser, wrote of Debussy's mysterious conception of tactile properties. He was a man of the widest culture. Nobody could compare with him. He had no schooling at all, by the way. But above all, he was a nature worshiper, and nearly half his art was inspired by the natural world, which he best reflected in his piano music. A pupil, the pianist E. Robert Schmitz, speaks of clouds, moonlight, passing breezes, sunken churches, the wind at sea or in the plains, sunrise on the golden roof, shimmering gold fish inspired by a Japanese lacquer, and so much else. Within his own music, Debussy was an incomparable pianist. The composer Alfredo Casella said that he used the pedals as nobody ever did. Debussy wanted the impossible, a piano without hammers. Many pianists came to him hoping to divine his rarefied music, and he gave his time freely, but he was seldom happy, telling the composer Edgar Varese, "I assure you, one cannot imagine how my music is disfigured. Often I can scarcely recognize it. Pianists dissect my music into bits and pieces like a roast chicken." He was a very witty man, by the way. Get his letters. There are no letters like it. Debussy was a man of many parts, some of them not pleasant, especially in his treatment of women, 2 of whom attempted suicide over him. He was self-centered, secretive, and sarcastic, with a slightly cruel streak lurking. He loved only his charming young daughter, Shushu, for whom he wrote the enchanting children's corner suite. When in need of money, he wrote some witty, perceptive, and often caustic music criticism gathered together under the dilettante hater. Edvard Grieg's music he did not like, and he called it bonbons wrapped in snow. César Franck was merely a modulating machine, and Debussy's criticisms of people are increased. He knows absolutely has no interest in any other composer but himself, really. Debussy wrote, except one, and you should be able to guess that. I heartily detest the piano concertos of Mozart, but less than those of Beethoven. Frédéric Chopin was his first love and remains so. My soul is as romantic as a Chopin ballade, he told a friend. In 1916, he dedicated to Chopin's memory, as he should have, his astonishing 12 etudes. They are extraordinary recordings of these works by many people, including Uchida and Pollini. Wasting away from cancer, his last years were punishing. The war further debilitated him. He was depressed that he could play no part in it. To his publisher, Jacques Durand, he wrote, "Truly my life is hard." And furthermore, as Claude Debussy is no longer making music, he no longer has any reason to exist. Taking to bed late in 1917, he lingered on until March 25th, 1918. Now remember, the war is going on horribly, and the bombardment of Paris is incredible, and nobody has even a hamburger. Did they eat hamburgers in Paris? I hope not. Whatever it is, it was a horrible time. But the point is, hardly anybody noticed that one of the greatest of all artists was gone. Now you notice I did not say one of the greatest artists of music was gone. He's one of the greatest artists in any art, in my opinion, of course. The obituaries were scant. No one was there at the funeral. And Paris was starving. But today his music sounds as new and mysterious as ever. So we're going to be honored with the book one of the Preludes, and all of the Preludes are perfect, both books. 1913 would be a sad year for everyone because the war would soon come, and that war would end the history of civilization as we know it. Oh, and please believe me, that's true. Matt, we're going to hear just a moment of just the first, second, third. We'll go through all of them, and we'll translate them for you instead of the French here, because it may help. We're ready. See, the chord is itself. It's a sensuous experience itself. It does not have to resolve. That's so revolutionary we can't understand it. Magnificent, that's enough. And that's called Delphi Dancers. And guess who premiered it? Himself. Debussy at the Louvre in 1912 played the first performance. And he was inspired by a Greek pillar at the Louvre because almost every week he was walking through the galleries of the great museum. Okay, next one is called Sails or Veils. He didn't really know. Let's go. For the first time in the history of the art of music, it is freed of all of its constraints, can have air wherever he wants it. Okay. We're going to go to The Wind on the Plain. Very difficult piece. It's a nature study. He loved nature. He would come down when he wrote Gardens in the Spain Rain, and he smelled the earth for 2 hours without moving, constantly. You see, this man was of another type than the usual. Here's The Wind in the Plain. Let's go, that's enough. It's an unbelievably difficult piece. Now there's a title that's called The Sounds and Perfumes Swirl in the Evening Air. Now all of his titles, this is very important, are put on at the end of the piece because he wants to make sure that you know that they're all really just oral experiences. He himself was a literary personality and he loved titles, but he wanted to make sure that they're at the end, so not to be influenced by it. You can hear whatever you want. And I don't mean you should make up pictures. That's the lowest form of listening. Okay, that is a Baudelaire poem. Did we hear it? No. This drives me mad. It's like a texture. I want to feel it. Listen to it. It's an exquisite fabric. Silk. That's it. We're going to hear now the Hills of Anacapri. He didn't like the way most people played it. He thought that they played it with a gypsy feeling, and he said it has to be Neapolitan. We're ready. Listen to the pedaling. It's like a Neapolitan folk melody, and it gets more and more wonderful. Okay, we're going to go to one of the saddest and greatest works in the history of using no notes at all. It's called Footsteps in the Snow. It's a psychological masterpiece, and well, such melancholy. Arau thinks it is a sadness that is an intolerable dilemma. Here is Footsteps in the Snow. This is the first moonwalker, really. It wasn't some idiot called Armstrong. It was him. It's a dilemma. Now we go to the most difficult of all, Matt. We're going to leave it and we're going to go to the title meaning What the West Wind Saw. And all people living on the coast of France are terrified of the west wind. It's murderous. It comes off the Atlantic and it can destroy anything. Here is Debussy's version of it, how he feels about it. What the west wind saw. Okay. I'm shot. Now we go to the exquisite melody, one of the easier pieces to play, but not to make really work. It's a slender and supple melody about a girl who sang to herself in a field of clover with lips cherry red. Girl with the flaxen hair, yeah. This harks back to an earlier style of Debussy. The 1890s. Okay. Okay, that's good. And that to me is I love it, but it's the weakest prelude musically. And now we have the Interrupted Serenade, and it's a portrait of a Spanish guitarist trying to sing a love song to the woman he loves, but alas, he's constantly interrupted, and you know the feeling. And he's lightly scorned, too. And Debussy himself said, poor fellow, he keeps on being interrupted. Here it is. Hear the guitar and the... Okay. Now, one of the great Shakespearean depictions, he was, as I said, highly educated. He was also an Anglophile. He loved everything about England. And they loved him. This is Puck from the Midsummer Night's Dream. Dance of Puck. I'm sorry, it's the Ingolf's Cathedral. One of the most famous and the longest of the preludes in about 5 minutes. Listen to these. This is one of his most impressionist works. There was a legend that there was a cathedral that went underwater and so forth. Okay, that's enough. Let's go to the puck. What a little guy. What a little guy. Having a lot of fun, huh? Tripping lightly, sliding, vanishing, reappearing, our nimble elf has a mocking laugh, Debussy says. Great, great. And now we go to the piece I dislike, actually. By the way, you're allowed to dislike things. Just because someone says it's a masterpiece doesn't mean that you will like it. We're too prone to what critics say. It's called Minstrels, and it's a music hall piece, very broad in the humor. 1900, everything American was big. Ragtime and people on stilts, and so we have this foppish rhythmical appeal. Always, though, you'll notice in any piece of Debussy, even when it has sparkle and humor, there will be a tristesse in it. There will be a tiny little moment of sadness. Everywhere, no matter what the piece. Okay? We're ready. This is the minstrel show. Now at intermission you'll say to me, "That's my favorite." Okay, fabulous job, Matt. Gosh, I need you. You're great. All right, I've read you my article in the Wall Street Journal on Debussy. I've talked to you from my book of the 12, and we're going to move now to one of the most ingratiating works in the whole canon of Schubert's sonatas, G major, written around, I guess, 1825-6, and it's in 4 movements. It was sometimes called Sonata Fantasy. G major is the key, and you'll hear also he's still using the minuet, just as he did in the sonata we heard a couple of days ago in C minor. There's going to be a trio. All minuets have a trio. I don't know that we'll get to it. But this is the most leisurely, and I would say it's almost impossible to just make cohesive. You have to love the piece so much. You just have to love it with all your might. You can sit there trying to voice those chords all day long, and it's a great way of living. Playing the piano is a great way of living, if you can afford it. We're going to begin now with the Molto Moderato e Cantabile, and it is going to be played by a Schubertian I like, from Cleveland, Ohio, Daniel Shapiro. Now listen to this melody. You have to have a good piano. What Schumann meant when he was listening to it, obviously, when he said, these pieces are of heavenly length. Heavenly length. Do you understand how difficult it is to keep this going, to keep that rhythm exactly right, and to voice those chords? Listen to that. There's no notes at all. Yet it's one of the most difficult pieces you can ever try. Okay, we are going to the Andante, Matt. Thank you so much. guy loves it. During this period, he was walking a great deal in the little towns of the Austrian countryside. To me, this is a work that we can only call vernal. Begin a day listening to this because I have too much to do. I wouldn't be able to move. It's 40 minutes long. I would just have to sit there. And he is making his own contribution. This could not be more un-Beethoven-esque. As I said last time, when I said to Brendel, oh my God, those sonatas are so long though, and he said, never long enough for me. The second theme is tremendous vigorousness. The term Schubertian, this is what it is. Okay, we're going to go to the minuet movement, which once in the 19th century was so famous that it was played alone, which is a disaster. He's out there with the peasants. Okay, we'll have to stop because we can't get to the trio. It'll take too long. That's it. Okay. No, you see, he can't stop. There's no way he can stop. He's in love. You'll get to the trio later. Now we're going into the final movement. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Oh, what fresh air. What breeze. I say all of these things because Schubert is indeed a pastoral composer, very much so often, as Beethoven is. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much, Matt. You're going to hear the whole thing. And yes, let's put it historically. Vienna is quite a small town. They walked around seeing each other every day. It's a fabulous city of architecture. And what's most interesting is that it is not yet infiltrated by the Industrial Revolution. If you've been to Austria, it's still a beautiful country. Well, they just love taking their walking tours. And they did. They thought of walking as a part of life. As we get in an automobile and think of life as being in these tons of steel, where we really are not traveling at all. And we don't travel. Traveling is an adventure. And an adventure we do not have when we go on a train or a plane. You could be anywhere. What does it matter? But once people, in fact, even when I see a Western and I see these people going out there in their covered wagons, and I say, well, yeah, they can be shot by Indians and all of that, and they can shoot themselves, and they could be shot by the cavalry, and they can die of starvation. They're going to not get across the mountains, and yet I would like to go with them. That must have been an interesting thing, how this country was built. Now, Footsteps in the Snow is, to me, in the moon. Would you have liked to go to the moon? Absolutely. I would love to have been chosen to go to the moon. So that is my story of Schubert, the moon, the Schubert Sonata, the Debussy Preludes, and you can pay me later.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been to the moon and back with David Dubal, as entertaining as he is informative, a famous radio host, a famous writer, and an authority on music, especially that of the piano. David Dubal spoke first of the great preludes of Claude Debussy, and I agree, they are perfect, really, such for the ear and on paper. There's one thing, though, that I'm not sure if I quite agree with when David Dubal mentions the fact that there are absolutely no constraints in Debussy's music. I think that Debussy was quite a contrapuntalist, and there is a lot of very tightly woven, very crafty counterpoint in his music. And yes, even though he did write chords that are not always resolving, he was very fond of parallel fifths, which are a big no-no in the world of harmony. I think he even flunked out of his harmony class in the Paris Conservatory. The pieces are very tightly structured. Although he was labeled with the term impressionist, he truly was a contrapuntalist, one of the really, if not the first modern composers, very much inspired, such as, as much as Wagner was inspired by chromaticism at that time, Debussy was inspired by non-Western modes, such as the whole tone scale and especially the music of the East. Debussy had a chance to attend the World Expo in 1899, the same event where the Eiffel Tower was introduced for the first time. And there he heard the Javanese gamelan music and was introduced to the pentatonic mode, which he excessively used in his pieces, such as, for example, the Estampe. And I'm particularly now sensitive to this, having just gotten back from northern China, where I was adjudicating the competition, and one of the categories in the competition was Mongolian music, especially Mongolian music, and so I heard a lot of what one might describe as the two-part inventions, all in pentatonic mode. So a very interesting experience. Why don't we tell the listeners the movements of the Schubert Sonata that's about to be played?
Yes, there's the first one, of course, Molto Moderato and Cantabile. And again, as David mentioned so eloquently, this is a very meditative piece. It's one of the most beautiful first movement. It is sonata allegro form, but you sort of are in a moderato, which is typical in a sort of Schubertian style, that nothing is going to be moving in a very fast direction. Everything's going to unveil itself in a very slow, meticulous way, harmonically and structurally for him. And it begins with this very large singing, which again, for Schubert, as we all know, he's primarily what we know. I mean, as pianists, of course, we deal with his piano works and things like that, but he's a song composer. He composed over 600 lieder. And as pianists, we're fortunate because they are for voice and piano, and we get to deal with that aspect for him. And I don't think that ever leaves any part of his composition, whether it be in small miniatures like the impromptus or Moments Musicaux, or when he gets into the big realm. And therefore, this particular movement where he says Molto Moderato e Cantabile as part of the title, that certainly says that. Then we have a beautiful Andante, a typical minuet trio with allegro moderato tempo, and then in a typical rondo, which Schubert likes, and they're sort of rounded binaries and all kinds of things, and crazy. His own sort of a rondo-ish form, because he likes variations in there. He likes a lot of different structures in his finale movements. We have this little allegretto. So in general, the whole feeling of this particular sonata, and Claire, since you've played this piece as well, there really isn't a fast movement in this particular sonata. Usually even the minuet itself, it's allegro, but it's with a modifade, moderato, and it's he sort of constantly yanks you back. So it's in many respects a very different type of Schubert sonata.
Yeah, what I find really interesting is that this is the big G major, and right after it comes the C minor sonata, and this is so Beethovenian. I find the G major sonata is much more like written in a fantasy form. In terms of form, it's actually really perfect, I think. Could be one of the most perfect sonatas composition-wise that he wrote, but I would say most of it is almost like a reverie, almost like you're dreaming within a dream. And the mood is certainly, I can certainly sense a lot of stormy passages in the piece, but on the average feel is definitely that of a reverie.
Definitely very innermost sort of an expression, and something that you mentioned, Edward, that's really important, the redefining the feeling of time in the Schubert sonatas, the heavenly lengths, to which we just have to sit back and completely redefine what we think of as a direction toward a climax, something that we've grown today in the 20th and 21st century to be impatient and to be constantly rewarded. This is something that Schubert holds back, and it's a great test of character to play and to listen to these pieces. So for those of you who are new to listening to Schubert sonatas, do not be frustrated by it, but rather enjoy this heavenly lengths.
Yeah, I would say just the opening of the first movement, it's already so unique in that it's not exactly a melody that we can sing. It's more like a sigh. I would think of it more as something you would hum. It's not something that's been planned out. It just almost seems spontaneous in a way. It just breathes out of you.
You can't be in a hurry to listen. You have to. It's very meditative in many respects, music, and many times you basically have to just sit back and just let the sounds wash over you, and just enjoy the beauty of harmony, and wherever the mood strikes. And I know Alan Goldstein, and at his recital, he also played he did the C minor sonata, and he was saying that it's one of these things that when you listen to Beethoven, it was very poignant. I want to repeat it. That he says, when you listen to Beethoven, you know sort of what to expect. You know what Beethoven is going to shock you with this, and what's going to take you on a certain journey. When you're listening to Schubert, it's like Schubert doesn't know himself where he really is going to take you. It's sort of a new reawakening experience every time you sort of listen to it. And even if it's a piece that we all know intimately, and we know when you sit back and you listen to performance of Schubert sonata, that you're always amazed where it takes you, and each performance is so unique of Schubert. That's why in many instances, a true testament of a mature artist, a pianist, is his or her performance of Schubert sonatas. I mean, that sometimes is a benchmark, because there are a lot of virtuosos and a lot of people can play fast music, but can you really sustain incredible power and drama?
Tension, I would say. Yeah.
Things.
That's right. That's what they say defines a true musician, and you being able to pull off a Schubert sonata where, as David Dubal says, there are no notes at all. Well, we're very grateful that you are tuning in tonight to ikif.org/live for the concert of Nina Tichman, which is about to begin in a couple of minutes. Nina Tichman is known as a pedagogue, pianist, and also a recording artist. It's very impressive. Her discography includes complete works of Aaron Copland, as well as Claude Debussy, as I mentioned before, to rave reviews. She plays anything from Beethoven to Max Reger and Krzysztof Penderecki. She also recorded the music of those composers. Hello, Geza. Seeing some friends. On Saturday night, we invite you to join us not only for the concert but also for the interview with the person who's very much behind the scenes but without whom this festival would not be possible. And it is Julie Kadersha, the festival director. So do tune in to ikif.org/live. You will also get a rare opportunity to hear an interview with David Dubal as a guest. And I'd like to thank you for all the Facebook messages that you've been sending, for the very positive feedback and great comments. If you have any questions that you would like to ask David Dubal, please send them to us, to IKIF, info@ikif.org, and we'll do our best to accommodate them.
Well, on the second half, in a total opposite effect compared to the large structure of what you will hear in the Schubert sonatas and how it's unveiled, we have these incredible miniatures of Claude Debussy, and they are absolutely gems of pieces. And one of the things to remember, even though David in his lecture said that Debussy intended, because all the titles that you will see from the Debussy Preludes are written at the end, and you only know that from the score, because obviously in the program all the titles are listed and you basically read the title and you hear the music being played on the movement. But if you look at Debussy's score of Debussy of the Preludes, the titles are at the end of the piece, and that sort of evokes that you sort of listen to the music, figure it out, and then he tells you what the actual story is, if there is a story. But I think if you look at Debussy's output in general, I don't think there's one piece of non-programmatic music, as what we would call this, that he did write. So even from his works like the Estampe, or Pour le Piano, or Image, Book 1 and 2, and especially some of the smaller pieces like Arabesques and things like that, they're all very unique and they invoke certain feelings. And as Magdalena was saying, that one of the things that we have to remember, number one, he's using different scales and different ideas, but at the same time, he is labeled in the Impressionistic period. And even though the Impressionists could be viewed, and there's certainly lots of different styles of Impressionism, but the craft and skill is absolutely there. It's not freeform. So even in the loosest of things, there's incredible structure, and that's what you will hear in each one of these pieces, that each one has a absolute encapsulated structure in what they are and how they're perceived.
Most certainly. Claire, have you played many of those Debussy Preludes?
Yes, indeed. Book 1, what Nina will be performing tonight, I had the chance to study them a couple years ago, I think, actually. They're not something I think beginners can really venture on, because I think what's needed is such a variety of sound. You need to be able to open up to a wealth of detail, and I think this is all during this period. I mean, if we look at the paintings that were done in this era, there's almost this kind of it's always in a haze. But if you look closely, there's such incredible variation in terms of color, in terms of texture, and it's the same way with the music. Of course, all of these titles, as Magdalena said, is in the ends of the pieces. I always looked at the titles first. I'm being a very visual person myself, and I think these titles, with the story that the images that come when you hear the music or you play the music, it couldn't be more perfect for the pieces that they depict. And I'm sure with titles like this, I mean, this is something that's perfect for audiences. They can really let their imaginations take off, and it makes for a really rewarding musical experience.
Indeed. Debussy, as David Dubal mentioned, dreamed of a piano without any hammers. And so we'll see how the Bösendorfer on the stage right now will tackle that challenge. We are about to hear Schubert, though, in the first half of this concert. 4 movements, molto, moderato e cantabile. Second movement, andante. Third movement, minuetto, allegro moderato with a trio within. And allegretto finale. Let's turn our attention now to the stage where Nina Tichman is about to begin her recital. And thank you again for tuning in to ikif.org/live.
Well, I guess Nina's not quite ready yet, so we're going to continue just talking a little bit. One of the things at intermission time, I'd like to remind everybody that Jerome Rose, the festival director, will be joined by Arnaldo Cohen and Alexander Kobrin, who all three of them are gold medal winners of the famous Busoni competition, and they will have a wonderful chat of reminiscing about this. And again, Jerome Rose already has played. He was the first concert of the festival that we had, and we're still tomorrow waiting to hear Arnaldo Cohen. Will be doing a wonderful recital tomorrow of scherzos and other things. And then, of course, Alexander Coburn will be doing a great recital with Chopin and Scriabin and many other works. And I believe now is the time that Nina Tichman will be doing. It's great to have you here at the 17th International Keyboard Institute and Festival, and we hope to see you next time as well. Thank you. Good night.
Well, good evening again, and I'm talking to you live from the Kaye Playhouse at Hunter College in New York City, and we've just had a wonderful performance of the first book of the Debussy Preludes played by Nina Tichman. She will follow after intermission with the beautiful G major sonata of Schubert. One of the great things that I've been able to do, my name is Jerome Rose, and I'm the founder director of the International Keyboard Institute and Festival. I have sitting alongside of me two great pianists, then we all share a somewhat common destiny. We've all won first prizes in the Bozzoni competition. I started it off as the senior member in 1961. On my left is the wonderful Brazilian pianist Arnaldo Cohen, and he won in the year 1972. And on my right, the young, marvelous Russian pianist Alexander Kobrin, who won in 1999. Both of them are appearing in this festival. Mr. Cohen is appearing tomorrow, July 29th, and with a wonderful program. And Mr. Kobrin is going to be appearing on Friday, the 31st of July. Welcome, gentlemen. It's wonderful to have you here.
Great pleasure being here, Jerry.
Wonderful to be here.
Well, I would like, as you represent your countries to such a degree, I know Alexander has now become a U.S. citizen, but he's still very much a Russian subject. His training was in Russia, and we're delighted. But please say a few words in Portuguese to all your friends in Brazil.
Boa noite, meus amigos. Espero que amanhã vocês estejam aqui nos acompanhando durante essa semana, esse festival maravilhoso. E boa noite de Nova York, do Festival Internacional de Piano.
Добрый вечер, дорогие друзья. Очень рад с вами общаться через Skype и очень надеюсь вас всех увидеть в пятницу. И огромное удовольствие быть на этом фестивале в такой замечательной компании.
Well, that's all we have to say for now. Anyway, wonderful things are happening. Arnaldo, now you are here in New York. You've appeared here before. You have a great program of the Bach-Bozzoni transcription of the Chaconne, the Brahms-Handel variations, and I've heard you play in the past the four scherzi of Chopin. You are off to Brazil following this concert. It's a fantastic experience to have you here again in New York. Tell me about the program. Tell me about your activities. I know you're at Indiana University, and I believe you may have have you become a U.S. citizen yet? I have no idea.
Yes, this is my third citizenship, basically, after living in London for many years. I was born in Brazil, lived in London for many years, also a British subject. And I moved to America 10 years ago when I accepted this challenge, I would say, and I became a professor at Indiana University, a great school of music. And of course, I mean, I have to divide my time just between teaching, playing, and also I'm linked to a wonderful organization in Portland, Oregon, where I'm the artistic director of the Portland Piano International. So it's also linked to piano.
Well, I'm happy to say I'm going to be, in April, I'll be playing at Portland State myself, so hopefully we will rub up against each other again.
Absolutely.
Alexander, you have recently become a U.S. subject as well.
Yes, and it's been a great honor, and it feels a little bit different, like I'm crossing the border with the wrong passport, like 007, but it seems very natural now, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, do you have a license to kill as well?
And to be brought to court, right?
Well, tell me a little bit about your program that's taking place on Friday. You've been here many times during the festival.
Thanks to you, Jerry, and it's been always such a great treat and pleasure, a great experience. The program for Friday night would be on Haydn and Schubert in the first half, and Chopin and Scriabin for the second, especially with this anniversary of this 100 years anniversary of Alexander Scriabin. Very special program for me. I haven't played Scriabin for many, many years, and now I was so delighted that I had a chance to start it all over.
Well, one of the things that I enjoy asking so many of these wonderful artists about is their earliest days. Now, you, Arnaldo, are very unique because you also studied violin and you are skilled. You had also taught mathematics, I believe. And how has this impressed you in terms of your piano playing? Now, years ago, I met your teacher, Jacques Klein, wonderful Brazilian pianist. Tell me a little bit about your growing up in Brazil and becoming a pianist.
Well, basically, I was not brought up to be a musician, a professional musician. Actually, when I was 20, I was doing 3 majors in the same university. I was doing piano, violin, and I was doing engineering. So I gave up the engineering university. I was in the 3rd year in order just to follow a career as a pianist. But for that, of course, I had to work and earn my living, and I was accepted. I auditioned, and I became a violinist of the Opera House Orchestra in Rio de Janeiro, where I played for almost 5 years.
Really?
While I was practicing piano between my orchestra duties, and until I went to Bolzano, and finally, when I was lucky enough to get the first prize, I gave up my job as a violinist.
Well, the interesting thing is, didn't you study in Vienna with the famous Bruno Seidelhofer and Dieter Weber?
I was there during this time. I took a six-month period of license from the orchestra, but there was just 6 to 8 months, basically, the studies, and which were absolutely fundamental for me, for my development.
How much did Jacques Klein influence you in your development?
I think Jacques Klein was basically the most important mentor I had, because I gave up everything because a very interesting story, which a friend of mine invited me to play in a master class by Jacques Klein. I didn't want to play because I was playing 2-3 hours per week.
I see.
During those times. So after I played for Jacques, he said, I would like to talk to you. And he said, you don't know anything, you don't have any technique, you play really bad. And, just destroyed me, and said, well, I know that was the reason why I didn't want to play.
Yes, but
for
obviously
years.
he told you the truth, which
Yes,
very few people actually
exactly.
do.
And I said, but, why are you saying that? I mean, I knew I didn't want to play for you. He said, but in spite of that, I think you have all the ingredients to become a very fine pianist.
Well, my career was launched certainly in Europe with winning the Busoni, and in your particular case, 1972 must have been the watershed year in your professional life as well.
Absolutely. So, and I said, the first thing I said to him, would you teach me?
Fantastic.
And he said, yes. So everything changed my life after that.
Alex, in your particular case, you were well-founded from the very beginning, growing up in Moscow, I believe.
Yes, I did, and my father was a pianist and a teacher. He was my first teacher, luckily, just for a year. He was very smart to give me up to another teacher, and my violin experience was very poor, just 2 days, and thanks to my perfect pitch, I gave it up really quickly. Couldn't stand what I was producing, and I was fortunate to study with the wonderful professors, Tatiana Zelikman in Bessing School of Music, and Lev Naumov from Moscow Conservatory. And yes, indeed, in 2005, my life changed tremendously. After I already won Busoni and some other competitions, I came to Fort Worth. Fort Worth was my very first stop in this country for Van Cliburn piano competition, which ended very happily for me. And after that, past 10 years, been absolutely unique and different and happy, and And thanks to Van Cliburn, we met, Jerry.
We met,
Yes.
and of course, we have to mention that Stan Zielinski from the Yamaha brought us together, and I'm delighted. And you have been a very devoted Yamaha artist for many, many years.
That's true, and I'm very happy to continue this collaboration with this wonderful company, wonderful people, and of course to play those wonderful instruments as Yamaha and Bösendorfer tonight.
Tonight. Now tell me, I understand that you are on the way. I talked to Eduard Zilberkant that you will be recording both Brahms concerti in the near future.
That's a very exciting project. Indeed, Eduard agreed to support this project, and I'm very excited to work together again, because we actually played Brahms D minor concerto together in Alaska back some time ago. And this fall, yes, indeed, we're going to be recording both concertos, and I'm very much looking forward to go back to the, as they say, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there.
You can see Russia from there, isn't that
True,
right?
absolutely.
True, absolutely true. Now, tell me about going to Brazil, your home country, and how much they love you. I mean, Isaac Baczewski, I've known for years, a wonderful Brazilian conductor, and such a rich heritage. I was looking up Brazilian pianists and Guillermo Novaes, and of course that South America had nurtured all these marvelous artists, including yourself. Tell me, what is the audience like for you in Brazil?
The Brazilian audience, is so musical. First of all, I mean, we have, because of our heritage, I mean, you have the African rhythm, you have the carnival in Brazil. It seems people are born with rhythm and music in their blood. So music, and especially piano, I think piano is the king of the instruments, literally, for Brazilian audience. And
well, there's a great tradition of popular music on the piano in Brazil as well.
Exactly. We have the bossa nova, which, I mean, in the 60s were just launched as sort of a new wave, a new format using impressionistic harmonies, and so it's a very sophisticated, I would say, music produced in Brazil by composers like Chopin and other wonderful composers. So we have now in Brazil fantastic orchestras as well. I mean, we have an orchestra in São Paulo, which is one of the best, certainly one of the best in Latin America, and now a new orchestra in a place called Belo Horizonte, which is a first-class orchestra. You have Rio. You have a very intense musical life in Brazil at the moment. As well, I think this is due as well to an incentive I think the government is giving to the arts through some tax, some sort of tax.
Well, you know, they love their national artists, and they certainly love you. I know that.
Yes, and it's, for me, Brazil sometimes is not always very organized, and for me this goes very well, because sometimes I could do, you know, concerts in one visit, and sometimes I have to go 3 or 4 times there. So I still have my family there. My mother is still there.
What a joy! What a joy!
So it's a wonderful.
Now, Alex, tell me a little bit. How often do you get back to Russia to play?
Just once a year, and it's of course a special trip. Getting always very nervous because all my friends and audience is there and anxious to see me, and I'm always so grateful for that. But you know, it's been tough, and I'm looking forward to my next trip, which is happening every New Year, around New Year. And the audience, of course, there is very warm, but at the same time, you know how particular they are, how familiar they are with great tradition, and of course, it's a huge responsibility playing there.
Can I ask him something? Do you think you feel more nervous playing in
this
your
is the worst.
country than abroad?
This is the worst. It's absolutely a nightmare. And it takes me probably several days to get used to the thought that I'm actually going to be on stage and playing.
Yeah, sometimes I feel the same in Brazil, curiously
Well,
enough.
you know, people knew you when. Now, hopefully, both of you in your concerts on Wednesday night and on Friday night will feel very comfortable. This is an absolutely wonderful audience, and it's wonderful to have you both sitting alongside of me. We are the Bozzoni Prize winners, and we're happy to be here this evening. Nina Tichman's about to begin the second half of the program. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We will be here, same time, same station, as they say. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.